Okay, great. Lots of parents of rising seniors. I'm sure eager to find out exactly what we would suggest their students focus on. So thanks for locating yourself. I'm Bob Carlton, and my colleagues Allison, Molly, and Delora are so excited to be with you this evening. We're with College MatchPoint, ESM College MatchPoint. We've helped students in their journey to the University of Texas at Austin for 16 years. And those students have taught us a lot because they do incredibly well. So we've just learned so much from them. This evening, we're going to share that with you, but let me give you a couple of things as context. First off, we will be sending you bright and early tomorrow, maybe tomorrow afternoon, the recording of this webinar, the deck of this webinar, and a toolkit. We'll reference it a couple of times. We don't have our revised guide. This year it'll be about a 60-page guide to apply to UT Austin. We don't have it yet because UT hasn't confirmed the essays and all the materials. We have a Q&A box. Please ask us questions. Many of you shared questions when you registered, but please ask us questions as we go. This webinar is the first of a series of webinars. And what I would say, to be really honest with you, is some of the upcoming webinars are just so exciting. So if you'd like to join any of these webinars, I'm going to pop up another poll and let you share with us whether or not you'd like to join those webinars. Here we go. Okay, great. So this evening's webinar all about UT. In about a month, we'll be talking all things Texas A&M. That is how broad College MatchPoint is. We're happy to talk about two long-term rivals and the journey to those respective schools. Testing is so big and back as such a big topic that in the middle of July, we'll have our colleague Jed Appleroot join us and talk a bunch about standardized testing. In August, we have a webinar on what juniors ought to focus on as they jump into their junior year. And then at the beginning of September, we will be talking about students with learning differences and what their journey to college should look like. So if you'd like us just to go ahead and sign you up for all of these, just share your information here. I'll close the poll in a minute. And we'd love to have you join us. My job is to sort of set the table, and the setting of the table that I would share with you about the University of Texas at Austin is it is a rocket ship in college admissions right now. This is the headline for the Daily Texan. It shattered the long-term, consistent sort of volume of applications. And we shared this from the Princeton Review. University of Texas Austin is the number 10 dream pick for parents. Many people think it is the future of higher ed, and you can tell that by the application growth. Over the last 5 years, no other public university has grown as fast as UT in terms of applications. In 1 year, they had a 24% growth in applications. As a frame of reference, overall, there was a 6% increase across the country in college applications. The growth was in Texas, but the largest growth was out of state kids who are eager to get to Austin. As a result, the top 5% auto admit has become really, really clear. UT hasn't released the auto admit results for 2025, but we are certain they'll be below 10%. A comment. The majority of students that we work with who are admitted to the University of Texas at Austin are not auto admit kids. They do incredibly well, and they're not in the top 5%. And many of them are applying to these selective majors like McCombs or Cockrell or computer science. And so the insights and advice that Molly, Delora, and Allison are going to give are not about these kids who are in the top 5% in auto admit already. There are those kids who want to go to UT, but they need to understand how they can tell a compelling story despite the fact that they're not auto admit. Now, our game plan begins and ends with fit to major. It is at the center of everything my colleagues are going to tell you. And I would say if you're a parent of a junior and you're on this webinar, when you get this tomorrow, stare at this slide. Get your kid to look at this slide because everything revolves around fit to major. I'm now going to ask my colleague Molly to sort of dive in and give you a little advice on how to answer the question of what major should I fit to.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here today. So, like Bob said, we're going to spend some time talking about that very important piece of the UT application strategy, exploring and selecting your major. So, at UT Austin, you're not just applying to college, you're applying to a major. And when UT Austin reviews your application, while they are looking at your class rank, your test scores, your academic records, and your essays and your resume, they are also asking themselves the question, can this student succeed in their major on day one? So your job in the application is to make a strong, clear case for your fit to major. So what does that mean? It means showing preparation. Have you taken and been successful in coursework related to your major? Have you engaged in activities to demonstrate your interest in the major? Curiosity. Have you explored the major and also have you explored the career paths related to that major? And have you demonstrated continued excitement to learn more about that field, about that major, about that career path? And lastly, alignment. Does your major choice make sense based on your experience and career interests? And I'm going to circle back to this later on. Overall, what they're wanting to see is, have you shown that depth and commitment to the major that you've selected and applied to? So let's talk about more ways to explore majors at UT. So before you can make a case for the major that you're applying to, you need to make sure that you've chosen a best fit major. And here are 3 great ways to start to explore your options at UT Austin. So number 1, I always tell students to start with just knowing your options. UT offers over 100 majors. The majority of students only know about 5 to 7 majors. So I strongly suggest you start your major exploration process by just reviewing the full list of majors. UT has their full list of majors available on their admissions website, which makes it really easy. I always tell students, you want to make sure you've read the whole menu before you've ordered. You can also use tools like Wayfinder and My Majors to get suggestions based on your interest and strengths. And like Bob was saying, those tools are going to be covered in more depth in our UT toolkit that we'll send out after this webinar. Number 2, every degree plan is going to show you the courses that you're going to take. And I really suggest that students, with the help of their parents, sit down and look at the courses that you're going to be taking, specifically in the junior and senior year of that degree plan. Read those course descriptions. Do they spark your interest? If yes, you're probably on a right track to finding a best fit major. And the last one is explore your career paths. Look beyond the major. Some careers are more flexible than you might expect. Knowing the multiple paths to a career can expand your options for majors. It can sometimes possibly introduce you to a major that is less impacted. We'll get to that in a little bit. But let's dive into some simple ways to explore careers. One of the easiest ways to explore both majors and careers is through informational interviewing. You can use our guide, to informational interviews to help you get started. But I'm going to give you a really quick and easy way to incorporate this into your everyday life. When I work with students, I oftentimes give this to them as an assignment. As you go about your regular life and you encounter different people, ask any and all people you encounter these three simple questions. What did you major in college? What do you do now? And what would you do differently? You'll be amazed at what you can learn by asking these three simple questions. And it doesn't need to be formal. They can happen when you're talking in the front yard with your neighbors, when friends come over for dinner, even when you're out running errands. For example, I worked with a student who was trying to decide whether he wanted to be an engineering major or a natural science major. He was specifically interested in a pre-med track. Through this exercise, he happened to be at his younger sister's orthodontist appointment. He was sitting there bored, so he decided to ask the orthodontist those three questions. Here's the orthodontist's response. He had majored in civil engineering, he was an orthodontist, and he would absolutely not do anything differently. The orthodontist informed my student that being an engineer helped him stand out during the very competitive dental school application process. So what did my student ultimately do? He ultimately went on to graduate with a civil engineering degree. Do we think he became an orthodontist? No. But that conversation sparked the idea that your major doesn't necessarily equal your career. This led him to be a prosthesist, and he used his structural engineering knowledge to fabricate prosthetics. So again, a great way of how he would have never understood unless he just had that simple conversation with the orthodontist. All right, let's talk strategy. So at UT, your major choice can be one of the most strategic parts of your application. It's important to choose a major where you have a well-aligned story to tell. That may mean considering alternate second choice or even first choice majors that still fit your interests and goals, but may have different levels of being impacted or competitiveness. For example, I worked with a student who was interested in applying to Maccombs. She really wanted to be a finance major. Through my work with her, we did major and career exploration. And what she really discovered was it wasn't necessarily finance specifically that she was interested in. It was more really what excited her was just applied mathematics. So she learned through informational interviewing that there are multiple majors that can lead to a career in finance. And through our work together, she decided and applied to actuarial sciences in the College of Natural Sciences. She now has graduated and she does work in finance for a wealth management company developing risk management models. So again, broadening your knowledge of the majors and all of the different paths that can lead us to the different career fields. I do want to stress, this is something that comes up in our work a lot with students, that the internal transfer process is more competitive than the freshman admission process. So we don't necessarily recommend that you apply for a perceived less competitive major with then the intention of internally transferring. We're often asked along these same lines about liberal arts undeclared. My response to my students is always that this is a wonderful path for one type of student. The student who knows that they want to study the liberal arts, that they can clearly demonstrate that desire to study the liberal arts in their application materials, but they just would like a few semesters to dabble in the over 40 liberal arts majors available at UT Austin. Again, your application has to align with your major. The admissions professionals will be able to tell if your activities are aligned with a different major, but then you've applied to the liberal arts. So I hope this has helped you given a clear understanding of how to approach major and career exploration, and then how to build that strong case for your UT application.
All right, everybody. Now we get to talk about how to apply some of what Molly was just talking about. Thanks, Molly, for that great info. So happy summer, everyone. You made it. Take a minute and take in the fact that You just completed and accomplished something challenging, right? Junior year is no joke. And the challenges that you successfully faced during junior year, take those in and let that give you confidence to move you through the application process for UT Austin. So one of the first things that I want to highlight as we think about what to do and how to maximize your summer, especially with respect to a path to UT Austin, 2 words that I want you to focus on as you think about summer. They are initiative and impact. Initiative is doing something someone didn't ask you to do, right? One of the things that I was thinking about as Molly was talking was one of the first things you might want to do this summer is take the initiative to explore majors at UT Austin, right? And guess what? If you are on a plane, in an airport line, at a family dinner, talk to some people. You're going to be sitting next to them for a minute. Ask them, what did you major in, right? Who knows where that conversation will take you? It may take you to one of the ways to spend your time this summer that I'm about to share. So initiative, something no one told you to do, something driven by your curiosity, your interests, right? And then impact. Impact could be one person. It could obviously be you. It could be the person that you ask that question. It could be a friend that you invite to do some community service with. It could be a customer that you talk to at work. A lot of students feel like impact. You have to start a nonprofit if you want to make an impact. That's fine, but that's not necessarily what you need to do. All the stuff that you're up to, whether it's common good, community service, leadership, family contributions, all of that counts. So, first step, and we're going to assume here that you're narrowing in on a ballpark for a major, okay? Maybe you're in that process, maybe you know already, maybe you're in the process of kind of maybe choosing between 2, narrowing it down. The first step to figure out, again, how to build that case for fit to that major, look at what you're already up to. Where in what you're already doing, and we're not adding a thing, could you take initiative and make an impact? For example, are you doing football or cross-country workouts every morning? Could you make a playlist for your teammates? Could you, if you are going to work as a lifeguard, is there someone on your team who may be new that maybe you could share some of what you know? All of that is initiative, right? So look at where you are current, everything you're already doing. Where could you take leadership, learn something new, ask a question, or share information, contribute to someone else? Also, with my students, I always ask this question when we're thinking about initiative and impact. They'll say, I've been on Highline for 3 years. And I'll say, what do you wish someone would do something about on Highline? And they'll say, you know what? I feel like the freshmen get really stressed out about tryouts. I wish someone would kind of give them maybe a workshop or something just to show them what to focus on. And then I tell my students, what if that person was you? What is something you wish someone would do something about? And what if that person was you? And you can apply that to anything that you're up to, right? And so you're going to take a look at your current summer plans and see, where could I take initiative? Where could I make an impact? A great way to make an impact is always, if you're doing something anyway, invite a friend, right? Colleges always love to see that you're including others in what you're up to. So that's always an easy way to make an impact. Internship. So I have good news for you. An internship for a high school student does not mean 40 hours a week paid at Google. It means 10 to 15 hours a week, 1 to 2 weeks, some shadowing, maybe some data entry with a family friend, with someone your family knows that you feel comfortable with, who says, you know what, come to my office. You can sit in on some meetings, you can observe some calls, you can go to some construction sites with us. And then typically, y'all, most students end up being asked to do something with social media because they are teenagers and everybody just assumes that they're good at it. Okay. But an internship, and this is what we call an internship. On that resume that Delara is about to tell us about, that shadowing of that orthodontist that Molly was talking about, the shadowing of, it could be a parent, it could be a family member. And guess what? A lot of times it is, because that's how you get access when you're a high school student. These experiences already in the going after it and making it happen, that's initiative, right? And then in the doing it, guess what? The impact is on you. And this is something a little bit later in this, when we start talking about essays, this is something that's really great to be able to talk about when it comes time to talk about that major. Typically, students who do this internship, and I honestly wish we had a different word for it, are going to need help from family members to make those connections, right? It's not about going on Indeed and applying for an internship. I'm sure you could absolutely do that. The majority of our students have a parent, family member that's making that connection for them, doing that introduction, and then that opportunity evolves. In fact, a lot of times it's the conversations like Molly talked about, that conversation that you have on the plane, the conversation that you have at the family dinner about what did you major in and what do you do now, turns into, hey, sounds like you're really interested in architecture. When we get back to Austin, do you want to come to my office and meet the other architects that I work with? That might turn into a 10 to 15 hour a week shadowing experience. That would be an internship. All right. The other way to really kick it up a notch in terms of your path to UT is really looking at how do you contribute? How do you want to contribute to the communities that you are part of? So the cool thing about service in the lens of college applications now, it isn't just community service that you get hours for. Its broad definition is any community that you contribute to. So it absolutely could be traditional service, right? You could go down and volunteer to hand out cookies at the blood bank. That would be amazing. But it also could be that you are healing from an Achilles injury and you want to make sure that all of your cross-country teammates avoid that injury. And so you're going to ask the coach if you can teach them some stretches to do so that they don't end up tearing their Achilles. That's common good. And so you see how personal it can be, right? Something that you learned, a skill or a talent that you have. If you're here in Austin with us, there are amazing traditional service opportunities to get involved in. But remember, the point of common good activities isn't so much gathering up all those hours. It's really about making that contribution. So if you're a Spanish speaker and you really enjoy improving your Spanish, find a way to connect that to common good somehow, so that, again, it's meaningful to you, right? And if and it could be as easy as, it might be a family member, it might be a sibling that you need to help or take care of, or, help with homework because they're in summer school. All of those things fall under that umbrella and make a really big impact at a college, at a university like UT Austin, where they have to have students who make a positive impact on other students because they're just so darn big. So the next thing that students will often ask, does a summer job count? Is that enough? And the answer is absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be a summer job at a law firm or at, at Apple or Google. It could be a summer job bagging groceries. It could be a summer job bussing tables. It could be a summer job as a nanny. All of those things take initiative to secure the position, right? And then all those skills that you have to develop and maintain in order to hold down a job make you a great college student. You have to show up on time. You have to deal with people that may or may not be easy to deal with, right? You're exposed to people that may have very different lived experiences than you do. And pretty much any summer job gives you the opportunity to take initiative and make an impact. For example, you're working at a coffee shop, talk to the person who's delivering the baked goods. Find out what their job is about. Or take some of the money that you earn, donate it to a cause that you are really passionate about, or tell a friend about a job opening. That's initiative and impact. I'm going to turn it over to, one more, online courses. So this is a great, I love these. This is a great flexible, if you already have a busy summer, if you already have a lot going on, there are so many wonderful online courses out there. Some, and many of them are free, and come from, reputable universities across the world. Online courses where you're just exploring something, in all of this, in all of your choices about how you spend time during the summer, your interests and curiosity are the driver. The student interest and what you're curious about, even if it turns into a dead end, even if you take a marketing online course and realize actually marketing isn't what you thought it was, and maybe you're not interested in it, that's still initiative, and that's a powerful impact. Some of the names in online courses that you may have heard or may want to check out, Coursera, there's lots of opportunities to do that. I've even had students find podcasts to listen to while they're traveling that relate to a major they're interested in exploring. And all of this stuff that I just talked about can find its way to your resume, which is what Delara is going to tell us about next.
Right. Let's take a few moments to talk about a key piece of the UT Austin application, the expanded resume. So UT's holistic review looks for several things across the application, such as fit to major and examples of initiative and contribution to the common good. The expanded resume is a student's opportunity to show their contribution in those key areas. I also want to point out that the expanded resume is different from the activities section of the common application. It isn't meant to repeat what you have in the common application word for word, but rather complement and enhance the activities that you've listed in the common application. So there will be repetition across the activities section and the resume, but the resume is meant to go deeper, significantly deeper than the activities section. So where your activities section only shows a broad overview of those top 10 activities, your expanded resume is a much more comprehensive picture of who the student is academically and as a community member, with an emphasis on that fit to major. And unlike a traditional one-page resume, UT often welcomes and expects a longer format. Your expanded resume can be several pages long. Some of my students have 5 to 6 page expanded resumes. And think of it as a detailed activity log, an inventory of everything a student might do outside of the classroom, and in some cases, like in fit to major coursework, in the classroom as well. When it comes to building a compelling expanded resume, there are a few things to keep in mind. I recommend every family start some sort of shared Google Doc or a Notes app, and log everything your student is doing, especially when they are in the earlier years of high school. It's much easier to complete and log your activities while you're doing them than it is when you're trying to recall them as your application is coming due. The time frame for your UT expanded resume is the summer before 9th grade up until the day you graduate from high school. And I start many of my meetings with my younger students, helping them create this activity log, making that activity inventory and helping them identify areas for growth and for development, but also for helping them think about what narrative is their activity log already starting to tell about them. So if you're putting together your UT resume or trying to plan for putting together your UT resume, start by logging everything, such as your jobs, clubs, hobbies, tutoring opportunities, internships, any special interest classes you may have taken. For example, if you've taken an internship at class at school, put that on there. Parents can be especially instrumental in this phase of the resume process. You've had to drive your student to all of these activities. There's a good chance you remember things your student may have forgotten. I also encourage you to make sure you include time commitments in these activities. How many hours per week are you devoting to this activity? How many weeks per year does this activity take up? This is the information you will be expected to supply in the application. And then finally, make sure your student is writing several bullet points about this activity, not just summarizing what they did or what that activity is, but the impact that they were able to make within that activity. And in a minute, I will talk about an example resume I've built with a student to show what I mean by that. But it'll also help you see the kind of organizational features that we like to include in these example resumes.
And the expanded resume we've seen makes such an impact for those non-auto admit students, even those in the top 20%. That expanded resume can be a real needle mover in the UT Austin admissions process.
Thank you, Allison. All right, so I want to show an example of a student who is applying to business. Is the screen share showing? Yes. Okay, then that's just on my screen. Great. So here you can see an example of a student who is applying to the business major at Macombs. You'll notice that we start their resume with just a highlight of some of the awards that they've earned in high school. And this resume is just capturing like the first page. So there are several pages, involved in this example, but I think this first page is really encapsulating what I think is one of their key activities, which, as Allison mentioned earlier, was just a summer internship. They did it at a local realtor's office. It was a friend of their mom's, but it became quite powerful when we really drilled into what exactly the student did, what they learned, who they were interacting with. So I'm going to read the second bullet point here out loud. Assisted with financial applications and loan paperwork for local families applying for housing. Utilized ability to speak Chinese and Spanish to make housing applicants feel more comfortable. So we can learn a lot about this student just from this one bullet point. It shows their interest in real estate, business, housing through their job at the realtor's office. It shows initiative. The student learned a new skill. They learned about loan and housing paperwork. This is something a typical high schooler probably doesn't know much about. It also shows a commitment to the common good. The student is utilizing the experience they have in 2 languages to help communicate with families. And finally, the impact the student had through this activity. They were able to make families undergoing a stressful process feel more comfortable. So by focusing on these key details, on impact and on initiative and the skills developed are the ways to really help make a resume stand out.
2 questions, Delora, because you've worked with so many kids who have done resumes like this, where the resume, as Allison said, ultimately, frankly, made the difference. They weren't in the top 5%. If a student isn't a rising senior, what's your suggestion about how they start thinking about their resume before they're even in the application season? Do you tend to see students even thinking about what they want those bullets to communicate in an activity they're doing this summer?
Yeah, so I think the resume is something students should get started long before the application to UT Austin even opens. It's something I often start with my students in their sophomore year so I can get to know them better, but also so I can start seeing what are these students' early commitments? What are the things that they are now starting to invest their time in? And so we are crafting those bullet points, thinking about impacts they have made, as well as identifying impacts that they hope they can make and make plans for those. So I don't necessarily think it's ever too early to start thinking about what you want your resume to look like, because you can always edit it later on if your plans change, if your major changes, if the activity shifts in some way. So yeah.
And the other side of that question for Allison, if they're a rising senior, is it too late? I mean, have they missed the boat in terms of being able to have activities on this resume that communicates fit to major?
Absolutely not. The good news is, in addition to the summer ahead, students get to report all the things they do in their senior year until you graduate. So you also have all of the runway of next fall and next spring, even if it's something that you won't have completed, you can absolutely put it on your resume in a future tense, and absolutely talk about it in your essays. And so, and if you are thinking about that runway, right? Let's say you decide today that you really want to major in communications, right? And then there's an opportunity that you haven't taken just yet in the club that you're in, where you could be at the club fair telling everybody about the club. Guess what, y'all? That's fit to major for communications. So once you have that lens, you can start building on, and we often do with our students, not just this summer, but all the way through next year. And the other thing I love about students having a fit to major exploration activity in the fall of their senior year is, if there is any wait list, anything like that, you've got the opportunity to make a case that you have continued to explore this major and that your fit to that major is only deepening. And of course, if you have a fit to major activity during the fall of your senior year, that is absolutely initiative. Did that answer your question, Bob?
It absolutely did. It may sound to many of you on this webinar, if you're a parent, that this is so different from the process that you went through when you applied to college, this emphasis on major, on making the most on summer, and then communicating it in a resume, particularly a resume that looks so different from a business resume. We want to impress upon you our experience working with students who have successfully navigated the journey to the 40 acres revolves around this expanded resume. Like, we cannot emphasize enough that one of the biggest opportunities is to get inside this, see where the gaps are, and take action. If they're a rising senior, as Allison said, still time. If they're a rising junior, like Delara talked about, really being able to be actively engaged in this, because trust us, as a group that has worked with so many students, you may be underestimating dramatically the expanded resume.
All right. My favorite part. This is my favorite time of year because our students have started college essay writing. I am a absolute college essay nerd. I do read them for fun. And I'm absolutely fascinated with all of the different ways that we can utilize the real estate of the Common Application to really bring a student to life. And that is what I believe, and with the options that may be ahead for UT essays, we're going to talk a little bit about what to focus on, and strategy, even though UT Austin has not yet confirmed the supplemental essays for the upcoming admissions cycle. What we do know about UT Austin's essays is a lot. One, that personal statement, AKA college essay, AKA long essay, that's in the common application. That's the college essay that if you're ever hearing about college essays in the media, that's the one people are talking about. That one is absolutely going to be part of the UT Austin experience. And so that is something that we can absolutely get started on. Of course, it's going to be an essay that you don't just use for UT Austin, but for other universities as well. In the past decade, UT Austin has had 2 to 3 supplemental essays, depending on the year. These are shorter essays that focus on, they're about 300 words or less. One has always been about why did you choose the major that you're pursuing as a first choice major. And then the others have focused on leadership, that common good impact, growth, and again, that how are you spending time out of the classroom? What's an activity that really made an impact on you? So while we don't have an official confirmation that UT Austin will have, we don't know what the supplemental essays are. We do believe they will have a few, and we're going to talk about what that long essay needs to do, and then some tips for the major essay, which again, while we don't have official confirmation, we do believe, based on our experience with UT Austin, that one is probably not going anywhere. Okay, so the personal statement is a 650-word essay with a job to do. And that job is not to be a cover letter. That job is not to list everything you've ever done in high school. That job is to help the admissions team get to know you. If they could interview everybody, they would. And because they can't, this essay is doing that job. I always tell students, the personal statement helps admissions teams finish the sentence. Allison is someone who, not Allison can. The transcript tells the story of Allison Can. The resume tells the story of Allison Can. But who is this person behind all the doing? What is essential about this person? What's important to them? How have they grown? That's the story that we want in that personal statement essay. And so the fun thing, again, I say fun because I'm a nerd about college essays, but it is often refreshing for students because it is a first-person narrative. It's an I-me story about something that has happened in their lives that has either it has caused growth in some form or another, maybe a shift in perspective, maybe a skill, maybe, a humbling experience that really taught them, really helped them key into some of their values. The most important piece of this is not the story, right? Students will often come and say, oh, I just don't have that unique story that something has never happened to anybody else. It's not what we need. Right? Admissions teams will tell us it's actually not the story itself that is the important part. It's the so what of the story to the student. Why did the student choose to tell that story? What did this experience change about them or their perspective? That's the point, that reflection that the story is kind of a container for. That's the point, right? That is what reveals those essential qualities that might come through if an admissions officer spent 30 minutes with a student. They might walk away thinking, wow, that is a really curious person. That's the kind of thing that we want to come through in that personal statement. And they are not looking for a perfect, polished, great American novel essay. They're trying to get to know you, and the student voice matters. So before you get 25 of your friends and family to edit that thing, before you run it through ChatGPT, just remember your voice coming through that essay is the most powerful piece to an admissions team. So we know the personal statement is out there. And again, we think about like, what should I be working on? Definitely start thinking about what are some stories in your life, in your experience. This is a great thing. Again, if you're spending time with family, you're on a plane, you're on a train, you're in the car, start talking through what are the things that kind of make the stories that have kind of built your life and kind of your family's understanding of you, because believe me, they have some. Well, again, that fit to major that we've all talked about, whether in the resume or in choosing the major, typically there is a 300-word essay that is all about this major. This is the opportunity to actually deliberately make the case that we've all been talking about this whole webinar, right? This is the opportunity to very clearly at the top of that essay state that major. This is what I want to major in, and here's what I've done to explore it. That's the point of this essay. The first 150 words of this essay should be a very clear statement. Literally, I'm excited to major in business at McCombs at UT Austin. That should be in the first couple of sentences. And then that story of how your initial interest led you to an experience that deepened your interest and led you to another experience that sparked your curiosity in another facet of this particular area and led you to another experience. That's the point of this, which is why it's so helpful to have at least a draft resume built before you start thinking about how you want to strategize and use the application real estate. We want to make sure that the key experiences related to your major, that you talk about those in this major essay. So if you do that 10 to 15 hour a week internship, it should be in this essay. If you did something at school, took a course, these things, we want the most impactful experience that you've had related to this major in that essay. And then, this is kind of once you've then made the case that this is the major that I know I'm interested in, and here's what I've done to explore it, then you take it one step further and connect it to the specific programs and opportunities that that major offers at UT Austin. You're not just making a case for this major, you're making the case for this major at UT. Lots of schools may have this major. They want to know why specifically this major at UT Austin, what's special about it? What do you know about it? And how are you going to maximize those resources? Ultimately, we also want students, and this means dive in and do some research. We tell students, figure out who's teaching in that major. Who are those faculty members? What are they researching? Is that something that you're passionate about? If so, mention it, right? Is there a club or a common good activity that you're already passionate about that you're going to bring to UT Austin? For folks who live in Austin, this is a great opportunity to say, the organization that I've been connected to all through high school, I'm going to get to stay connected to if I go to UT Austin, and then I'm going to get my fellow Longhorns connected to that organization as well. So again, we're looking at initiative and impact and common good. This essay does not need to be a story. So I just told you the personal statement does need to be a story. This essay does not. This essay has a very dense format to get a lot of that wonderful exploration in there. So don't be worried if it doesn't. So for example, you don't need to tell I played with Legos for my whole life, and that's why I want to be an engineer story in this essay. You can just say, I'm excited to pursue a degree in engineering, and here's what I've done to explore it. We also want to think about how this essay complements your personal statement. So you definitely want to map out, and especially if there are other supplemental essays, before you start writing, identify what are those experiences that you're going to want to have in your major essay, so that you don't write your personal statement about that. Save it for the major essay. But then maybe there's a quality. Maybe that quality of being super curious is something that you bring out in that personal statement. And now it really connects to that passion for engineering. You want to know how things work, and it's something you've done your whole life. You tell us that in the personal statement. And now when you're talking about the major, we see all of your values and all of your traits that also contribute to your fit to that major. And as Molly said, being able to succeed in that major on day one.
One minor observation, and that is that generally speaking, we've seen that UT, when they read your students' documents, and I want to confirm to all parents on this Zoom, it is a human being. It is not a bot. And that human being appears to start with the student's resume, the first document, as Molly said, to some extent, the overlay to that major that they've chosen. They look at that resume at the level of detail that Delora took you through. We oftentimes hear students say, it's just a list of activities, isn't it? And I think you really want to take away from Delora's voiceover that the bullets are almost as important as the actual activity name itself. And then they read the personal statement. Resume, why major, then the personal statement. Because they're really trying to understand this student as a Macomb student before they locate them overall as a UT student. Okay. Now, we know for many of you on this Zoom, you're a parent of a rising senior. They've just wrapped up junior year, and you're asking yourself, what should I do next? Like, literally, this webinar was helpful, but when I hang up, what should I do next? Delora has worked with so many students outside the top 5% who have navigated this journey. Delora, can you give your advice on how to make the most of the next 5 months?
I would love to. If you are a rising senior on this webinar or the parent of a rising senior on this webinar, please internalize this screen. These are the sort of like marching orders we are all on for the next 5 months between now and the October 15th early action deadline for UT Austin. So right now, my seniors are kicking off their essay writing, working with their essay coaches to knock out their personal statements. In fact, I just had my very first early bird finish her personal statement today. I know, I was shocked and thrilled. But some other priorities to keep in mind so that you are ready to submit by the end of September or in early October include, like I said, knocking out that personal statement. Once UT confirms their essay prompts, get going on those essays. And if those essay prompts are not finalized by the time you finish your main essay, do research for your major at UT anyway, so that you can be ready to go when the prompts are finalized. In terms of your non-essay writing tasks, you will want to make sure that your letters of recommendation are accounted for and will be ready. You want to make sure that your expanded resume has been completed and proofread. And if applicable, you will want to make sure that you have a plan to complete your standardized testing. For any younger students on this call or their parents, your priorities are going to look a little bit different. So if you are a rising sophomore, use this summer to explore college majors, to go on some shadowing experiences, to do some informational interviews. If you already know what your major is, get to work planning activities to help you deepen your commitment to that major. If you are a rising junior, much of that work is going to be the same. Deepen your commitment to your major, engage in the common good. Make sure you're documenting all of that in your activity log, and also make sure that you are making a plan for standardized test prep. Doing all of these things will make applying to UT a much more manageable process.
Two comments on this timeline, as Delora was saying. The first one is just how important the month of June is. I don't know that we can stress it enough. The worst applications are applications that start on October 11th. where a student is rushing to get a resume done, essays done. They look back with regret and honestly say, why didn't June Bianca get really involved? Because October Bianca would thank her so much. Having a game plan, having a timeline, being able to make sure that that stress doesn't consume your family is the greatest advice we can give you, given our work with students. And then the second thing is obviously, kids have busy summers. This fits into the summer jobs that Allison was talking about, or the common good activities, or that internship, or that research project. It obviously fits into that. And so we think that work is important. We think it's meaningful. And again, that's why our timeline is so critical to kids. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, we love working with kids. We work with so many kids who apply to UT. 2/3 of the kids that we work with apply to UT. But what we always tell them is we love coaching you. You're doing the hard work. Now, we've so appreciated being with you this evening. It's been great to sort of talk you through our experience of UT. You can tell we're UT nerds. Like, you can absolutely tell. We could spend another 5 hours doing this. In fact, God forbid, if you went and got your student and jumped them on this Zoom, we would just start coaching them. That's how much we love this. Okay. And we love it honestly because while some parents tell us, I've heard nobody gets into UT anymore, that hasn't been our experience with the kids that we've worked with. It just hasn't. And we can name those kids and tell you what incredible stories they have, and we can tell you that UT saw those stories. Tomorrow, we're going to send out a recording of this webinar, a deck, these slides, and the toolkit that we referred to a couple of times. Once our beloved friends at the University of Texas at Austin decide that they want to publish on their website the materials that are required for this year's applications, we are ready to turn around our 60-page guide in detail. And then for some of you on this Zoom, you may hang up and think, okay, I really don't know what my plan should be for my student. If you'd like to grab 30 minutes with me, I've popped up another poll here. If you'll just share your information, tomorrow morning I'll follow up with you. We'll find a time in the next couple of days to really talk through your student, to really go back to some of the key questions that Molly has shared, Allison has shared, Delora has shared. But we want to end with this key suggestion to all of you. The stress of this will not make for a better application. The stress of this will not make for a better summer, and it certainly won't make for a better senior year. Do the things that keep you healthy as a parent. Make sure your child is doing the things that keep her healthy as a teenager. And have a plan, because that plan honestly will help you for a student's application to UT. But trust us, once a student has done the work for UT, they'll be able to reuse that material at so many other schools. That's the beauty of applying to UT. It's sort of the hidden advantage. If your kid loves UT, once they're done with UT, sort of dirty little secret, they have most of A&M done. They have a lot of other applications done. It's been a joy to be with all of you this evening. We certainly appreciate it. Please let us know how we can help. Thanks so much. Have a great evening, everyone.